Okay, so today we are discussing Kantian ethics, which is the third of the three main contemporary ethical theories that philosophers are pretty split between: one third, one third, one third, right? So one third of philosophers are utilitarians, one third philosophers are virtue ethicists, one third philosophers are Kantians or deontologists. Kantian deontology just means not consequence focused, but rule focused. That'll become more clear as we go on, right? And Kantian, because it originates with Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant was a philosopher who lived from 1724 to 1804. It doesn't matter all that much. What Kant thought doesn't matter that much, right? So in the same way that if you do physics, you don't necessarily study Newton. You might study Newtonian physics, but Newtonian physics is very different today than it was when what Newton described, right? Or if you do relativistic physics, you don't necessarily spend your time worried about what Einstein believed, right? It's a theory that's proposed initially by someone, but then developed over time. So Kantian ethics or Kantian deontology is a moral theory that originates with Kant, but is very different from anything he might recognize and is maybe involves, and we don't necessarily care exactly what he thought, right? Like there are things that Kant said which are clearly wrong, that Kantians don't believe, but there's lots of good things that Kant said, which is the basis of the theory we're going to talk about today. Kantian ethics is, let me just, in broad strokes, virtue ethics is focused on you being a good instance of your kind, a good human being, being good at human life. And being good at human life means like, oh, there's all these different values: honesty, courage, charity, work-life balance, loyalty to your friends, to your family, being a good father, being a good son, right? There's all these competing things. And being a good human being is like, oh, I gotta be able to bring in all this information, recognize all these values, give them their proper weight, and make the right decision, right? Being good at human life, it's a skill. Like being a good flirt, being a good poetry writer, being a good author, right? It's not something that you can codify it into a rule, right? It's a skill. Utilitarians, a very different ethical theory. There's not a bunch of values. It can be codified into a rule. It's happiness or satisfied preferences. And you just need to maximize that. You need to make the world as good as possible. The right thing to do is whatever adds to happiness in the universe and reduces suffering. So donating to charity, going and helping people, volunteering, going and working on Wall Street and getting a bunch of money and then donating it to people in need, right? For utilitarians, they do have a rule, usually called the greatest happiness principle or the utility principle. Kantians are going to also give us a rule, but a very different rule. And the rule is focused on free will and respecting free will. It's not about making the world a better place. It's not about you succeeding to be a good human being, and that means like navigating, like being good at, skilled at life. It's about being a good free will. And we know what a good free will is. It's one that sets goals for itself. It doesn't procrastinate. It accomplishes goals and it respects other free wills. That's it. Doesn't have to make the world a good place. Doesn't need to like alleviate suffering. I mean, you could, if you choose that for yourself, then fine. But a good free will is just one that follows through on its own choices and respects other people's choices, right? So good. So let's look at the sort of moral systems that we have, and then we'll get to Kantian ethics. Chat participants. Good. What is the supreme principle of morality? What is like the one rule? There's just one, what are the 10 commandments? No. What's the one commandment? Virtue ethics, ethicists, they're not going to give you one. They're going to say, listen, there is no such thing. There's not even such, like, there's rules of thumb. There's like kind of like good advice I can give you, but being moral involves being a mature and having this uncodifiable, you can't write it into a rule, skills, virtues that a good human being possesses, right? Good at navigating work-life balance, good at navigating loyalty to friends versus loyalty to job versus loyalty to your family, good at knowing what to say, knowing when a friend is asking too much of you and when to stand up for yourself and when just to help a friend, right? All of these things are, balancing all these different like aspects of human life, courage, right? You don't just run into a fire and then get yourself trapped. So then more firefighters need to show up to save you and risk their lives to pull you out because you didn't know what you were doing, right? It's not disregarding danger. It's about knowing like, okay, I know I can help here. I can overcome resistance to danger and do the right thing, right? Being good at human life is a difficult skill. That's what virtue ethicists want to say. There's no one rule. There's also no one value, right? It's a skill of dealing with a bunch of different values that all conflict and pull in different directions. Utilitarians do think that there is a supreme principle of morality. And there is just one value. Usually it's happiness. So utilitarians argue that the foundational rule from which all of ethics derives is what is sometimes called the greatest happiness principle or the utility principle. An action is right if and only if, among your available options, it maximizes net happiness over suffering. Otherwise, the action is wrong. It's not just your happiness. It's all happiness in the universe for all time, long term, right? So I'm just thinking, I want to make sure that in the history of the universe, there's as much happiness on record as possible, right? That the whole of the universe contained as much goodness as possible. I want to make the universe as good as possible. That's the utilitarian viewpoint. And that does give us a pretty hard to apply rule, but simple in concept, right? So whether to lie or not depends on whether it will make the universe a better place or not, whether it will make there be more happiness or not. That rules out most lies that people want to tell, right? Most lies are things that benefit me at the cost of others. So the utilitarian is going to say, no, don't do that, right? Because that leads to overall more unhappiness in the universe, less happiness. Same thing for stealing, same thing for, but sometimes lies can benefit the world and you should tell those. And sometimes cheating can benefit the world and you should do that, right? Sometimes stealing will do that. So the question is just like how, same thing for laws. Do I pass this law or not? Do I force people to wear helmets when they ride motorcycles? Is that going to maximize happiness and minimize suffering? Or is the feeling of restriction on people's freedom and like people getting tickets, is this just a way for mayors and the government to get fines from people to pay for the mayor's yacht, right? Like that's the sort of utilitarian calculus we have to make. Okay, so Kantians are going to agree with the utilitarians that there is one foundational rule from which all of ethics derives, but they argue that that rule is not the greatest happiness principle. Instead, it's the categorical imperative. This is the rule we are led to accept if we take free choice to be the fundamental value of ethics rather than happiness. It's called the categorical imperative because it applies to all free wills, all people, regardless of what you've chosen for yourself, what you want, right? So even if you say, I don't care about ethics, it still applies to you. Even if you say, I'm trying just to make as much money as possible, it still applies to you. Even if you say, I don't care about people, it still applies to you, right? So it's a categorical imperative. It's an inescapable rule that applies to all free wills. Incidentally, it doesn't apply to inanimate objects. So the ethics doesn't apply to staplers, doesn't apply to cell phones. It also doesn't apply to animals like rats, cows, spiders, but this is all free wills. Free wills can't escape this, the obligation to uphold this, the rational requirement, according to Kantians. So what is this rule, right? We know what the rule, I mean, the virtue of this is saying there is no rule, it's a skill. Okay, that makes sense. The idea that ethics doesn't have a rule, it's just this nebulous, difficult skill to master that can't be written down. I'm like, okay, I think people they're like, that seems to be what I would expect a philosopher to say. Unexpectedly, the utilitarians have a rule. They say like, it's maximize happiness and minimize suffering, make the world a better place as much as, like, all right, that's cool. That's a good rule. Actually, that makes sense. That would be the only rule, and we could do all of ethics with just that rule. I'm surprised that someone could come up with a rule that might make sense as the only rule. What else? What other rule could there be? Well, the Kantians say there's another alternative, the categorical imperative. And then what Kantians give is like, well, we're not exactly sure how to write it down. And there's three possible ways of doing it. So I know it's confusing. We're going to talk about all of them, I suppose, to some extent. But when we talk about the categorical imperative, it's really just one rule. But some Kantians think there's three ways of putting it. And even though they don't sound the same, they really are the same. Other Kantians think, oh, no, there's three different rules, but the other two are wrong. It's just one of them. And we need to throw the other two out. Like there's three candidates. But they're mostly the same, but we realize actually there's just one that's the correct one. So I'll talk about all three. Not so much the kingdom of ends. We'll talk about that when we get to political philosophy, because political philosophers talk about that one a lot. And that's sort of like, imagine that you and all the other free wills are together, coming to a social contract on how you're going to how you're going to treat each other. And it's what you could agree to as just a pure free will, not knowing if you're male or female, strong or weak, rich or poor, right? It's like the laws that that a bunch of free wills would set for a community of free wills who weren't biased by these unimportant features about each other. I wouldn't be voting because I'm male and I'm from Texas and I'm healthy and I'm educated. Like you get rid of all that stuff. You say like, what could just a bunch of free wills, what sort of society, what sort of social contract would they agree to? So that's the free formula of the kingdom of ends. I'm not going to talk about that for now. Political philosophers talk about that formulation of the categorical imperative quite a bit. I'm going to talk about the formula of humanity and the formula of universal law. They're called formulas because they're formulations, ways of stating the categorical imperative, ways of stating the rule of ethics. And they're supposed to be the same thing, but they kind of sound very different. And you can kind of give different arguments for each of them. So it's not quite clear whether Kantians they do want one rule of ethics. Maybe the thing to say is they're either undecided between what exactly it should be, or maybe the thing to say is there's just two ways of saying the same thing that sounds very different. Okay, so let's start with the first one. So act that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, always at the same time as an end, never merely as a means. So that is some 18th century gobbledygook that is hard to understand what it means. But let me break it down for you more simply. Don't use people. Don't treat people merely as tools. Don't merely as ends, right? Or merely as mere means. So this stapler, this is a mere tool. It has no value in itself, right? If there was a universe and it was just a bunch of staplers, there'd be no value in that universe, right? And this thing would have no value. It's an inanimate object. Its value comes from me setting a goal. I decide to, I don't know, get a degree, work at this place, make money so I can support my family, do whatever, right? And I need a stapler. Now this is valuable because it's useful to my goals, my freely chosen goals. The claim here is that all value stems from free wills, that it's me choosing things that makes there be things that are worth me doing, and things that are useful to me accomplishing those goals become valuable. So inanimate objects are mere tools. I am not like that. I'm the source of the value. I'm a fountain of value, and I set goals, and then value filters down to mere objects as instrumentally valuable to my goals. Let me just talk about this another way. So there's kind of a remarkable thing that's true of us, right? That's not true of any other object. Bicycles, tables, mice, cats, cows. So I decide to lose 10 pounds, and I'm going to do it through an exercise regime. I'm gonna go for a run. I'm gonna go for a walk. Let's downgrade our goals. I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm gonna go for a 30-minute walk every day, every morning. I'm gonna get up at 8 a.m. and go for that walk. Now I might fail. I might not do that. But sometimes I succeed. Sometimes I get up every day and I do it. And I want to quit, but I don't. I want to stay in bed, but I don't. Same thing for like, you guys are all getting a college degree right now. That's hard work. That takes sacrifice. You're pushing through temptation. You're pushing through instinct to not want to work. You're constantly wanting to be lazy and quit, right? And just do something else instead, to just watch TV. But you like turned off the TV and you came to lecture despite the fact you didn't want to. So we can set goals for ourselves. We can say, you know what, I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden, we're motivated to do it. We can resist temptation to quit. We're motivated to push through difficulty. We can overcome our instincts. We can overcome our procrastination. We can force ourselves to do unpleasant things. So we have the ability to choose for ourselves what we're going to do, not be driven around by our instinct of the moment, right? A mouse doesn't have goals for the week. It doesn't have yearly, what are those called? New Year's resolution. Like no other animal has a New Year's resolution. No animal has a weekly goal. It has like what's happening to it right now. It's cold, it's looking for warmth. It's hungry, it's looking for food, right? It's responding to its most strongest desire of the moment. And it's pursuing how to execute whatever its goal in the immediate moment that's been given to it by its instincts. You have the ability to set a goal for the year and pursue it. And sometimes you falter, sometimes you procrastinate, sometimes you're lazy, but by and large, you are remarkably successful at pursuing goals that you set for yourself. So the claim here is that only, so where does that ability come from? How do we have it? There's lots of questions. But one of the things that Kant thinks is true is that only works if you treat yourself as making something important just because you chose it. That you say, I decided to become a firefighter, and now it's important that I become a firefighter, that I get up and I research the requirements, that I exercise, that I go and visit the fire department and ask questions. Like you make a choice, and all of a sudden you're treating that goal as important just because you chose it. So part of being a free will, being something that can set goals, pursue them, and be free of just your instincts and pursue things that you set for yourself, to be the author of your own life, is to value yourself and value goals simply because you chose them, that they are the choices of a free will. So Kant thinks the Kantian ethical argument, part of it, one way to make it, is that valuing free will, valuing free choices is just a necessary requirement of being the sort of thing you are. Like that you yourself, all of you, I know you're all free wills because there's no way you got into this, like there's no way you learned English and then you went to college and you logged into the Zoom meeting, right? There's no mice sitting here listening to me, understanding my words and being like, oh, I'm only talking to free wills. I'm only talking to people who can set goals and pursue them. You're the sort of thing that can set goals and pursue them and treats yourself as important, and treats the goals you've picked as important just because you've chosen them and am trying to author your own life. And so Kant wants to say, great, all of you, you're being inconsistent. You need to value yourself, but also you need to recognize that other people have that same ability. So part of being a free will is saying the value of staplers is only due to me. Like it filters down from my choices, and that I can make things valuable just by choosing goals that need them. That's why I push through my instincts and stop procrastinating and force myself to do things through my choices. And I need to respect other people's value, that they have the value of the same sort. Like I have this value, and so do they. They're exactly like me. They're also beings that can choose things and value things because they've chosen them, and they're trying to self-author their own life. And they're trying to be an ornithologist. I'm trying to be a philosopher. He's trying to be a psychologist. He's trying to be a construction worker, right? We're all really just free wills self-authoring our own lives, choosing things and then pursuing them and accomplishing them. And I'm saying these things are important for me because I've chosen them. Those things are important for them to accomplish because they've chosen them. And the way we're all the same is that we are unlike mice and we're unlike staplers in that we are authoring our own lives. We are responsible for what we become and what we do. And we are making things valuable through our choices. So the claim here is ultimately the source of value is us and our choices, and our free wills are something that we are committed to being valuable because we take them to be important. That like you wouldn't be here if you didn't. You would be laying in bed saying, I'm going to go to college and get a degree and go to class. And then you wouldn't do anything because you don't respect your own choices and you don't think you're capable of making things important by choosing them, right? I mean, I think of it as like an extreme depression of someone who doesn't think that anything they do or choose is important. And so they can't follow through on anything and they just sort of drop out of being an agent and they just lay in bed and they don't act. If you're acting, if you're doing stuff, you're committed to your value. And Kant thinks that logically commits you to the value of others and respecting other people's choices too. And that gets us to this first statement of his categorical imperative. I'm going to share my screen. The first statement is, so act that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, as always at the same times as an end, never merely as a means. So what does that mean? Treat other free wills, other people with disability, that autonomy, making their own lives, authoring what they do, in yourself and other people, always as an end in themselves in the sense that their value doesn't come from anything else. They're the source of value. They're the reason staplers are value. Staplers are just mere means. They're objects that are merely instrumentally valuable. Their value comes solely from the choices I make and others make. But people, right, other human beings, their value doesn't come from my choices. They are the source of value, just like I'm the source of value. Okay. So let's look at this statement. A couple things to say here. What is so act that you treat humanity? Why is humanity so important here? Well, first thing to say is that Kant doesn't really care, and Kantian ethicists don't really care about humanity as in a biological concept or human DNA. That's not what they mean. What Kantians take to constitute our humanity, in the sense intended here, is our capacity for autonomous choice, free choice. Humanity in this sense could also be possessed by some non-human beings. For example, Martians, perhaps certain highly developed non-human animals, God, but also lacked by certain humans. For example, ones subject to severe brain damage. Let me dwell on this. So Kantian ethics is supposed to be a commitment that every free will makes. Everybody who is in charge of themselves, who can overcome their instincts, set goals, say that I'm going to do this, and then be motivated to do it and resist temptation and follow through. This is the ethics for them, right? And Kant thinks that you're logically committed to respecting all other beings like yourself if you're valuing yourself as a free being. And so if there's a Martian somewhere, if there's a higher being, some alien race that's super powerful, they have to respect, because we're equal to them in this respect. They might be smarter than us, but they're free like us, and they should have to respect all free choices, all free beings. It's not about a matter of intellect. It's not a matter of our biology or our DNA. I mean, even God, right? So Kant's religious, and so Lutheran, and so he thinks that, like, when the Bible says, the Christian Bible says that God creates man in his own image, he doesn't mean that like God has 10 gangly fingers and 4 limbs and can grow a beard, right? It's not that like in what respect is God like man? In what respect is God creating man in his own image? He's giving him free will. He's giving him autonomy. He's letting him have choice and make his own life and be not like an inanimate object, not like a mouse that's just driven by instinct, but somebody who can make choices, resist instinct, and pursue them. Like here's the criteria. Have New Year's resolutions. God can have New Year's resolutions, so can man. That's the respect in which man and God are the same. And that's what makes morality apply to us. Because I have to respect all other beings that can make New Year's resolutions. And the reason I can make them is because I value my own ability to do that. I mean, how else would I be able to follow through on them? I know I fail a lot, but like sometimes I succeed on my resolutions. I respect my will. I think like I would totally fail all the time if I thought like, who cares what I chose? It's just something I decided for myself, and I don't care about what that person says. I don't care. I don't care about myself. So great. So this is supposed to be an ethics not just for humans. And when it says respect humanity, it's not even respecting humanity that Kantians are talking about. It's about respecting free will, autonomy, self-authorship, freedom from instinct. Yeah. There are even human beings who might actually fall outside of this ethical concern. If you imagine somebody who is hit over the head and they're reduced to the intellect of a 6-month-old. A 6-month-old human, is not making free choices, is not free from instinct. They have the sort of capabilities of a, I don't know, adult cow, right? So you might think that there are certain humans that don't even matter on this moral system. But there are things that are not human that would matter. Maybe AI at some point. There's a question as to what is our ability to make free choices. Okay. So our capacity for autonomous choice, literally self-rule our humanity, is our ability to step back from our desires, wants, and impulses of the moment and choose for ourselves what to do and what sort of person to be. To set a long-term goal and to resist temptation over time to follow through on our choice. The lower animals do not have this capacity, Kantians claim, although certain apes may. A dog or a rabbit is slave to their passions in a way we are not. We can fail and give in to temptation, but it's possible for us not to, whereas other animals don't even have the capacity to try and self-govern themselves. Great. So that's what, in the formula of humanity, that's what we're talking about. It's saying, I need to respect, my ability to self-govern myself only works because I value myself and value this capacity in myself. Other people have this capacity. What sort of ethical system does this lead to? It's one where I shouldn't procrastinate and I should follow through on my own choices. And when I'm making my choices, I've chosen to be a philosopher. Other people have chosen to be a lawyer, and I need to interact with them in a way that treats them as an equal free will, where I take my choices for myself to be important, but their choices for them to be important. So I'm not going to be like, oh, he chose to be a lawyer. I don't care that he chose to be a lawyer. I'm going to undermine that, steal money from him so I can support my own goal of becoming a philosopher. That's not treating the ability in him as equal to the ability in me. He has the same ability. And if it's valuable in me, why wouldn't it be valuable in him? Okay. So the way the formula of humanity is framed is, to treat others at the same time as an end, never merely as a means. So there's like this weird phrase, don't treat people merely as a means. It just means don't treat them like a tool, like an object. Inanimate objects, again, this is my iPod or my AirPods case. AirPods are only valuable because they're valuable to goals I've set, which is to listen to music, to listen to journal articles that I'm listening to with an app, to make myself look cool, like whatever your goal is. But you have something that matters to you, that you've chosen to pursue, that you bought these things, that you worked to get the money, and you spent the money to get these things, and you went through all the special effort not to lose them, and you even got this little silicone case. So so these are important to you. That's why they're important. But they're just if they weren't important to you, they would be valueless, right? Their value is because of their value to you and the choices you've made. Other people aren't like that. Other people aren't just valuable because they're valuable to you, they're also the source of value. Just like you're the source. I'm the source of the value of these. You're the source of the value to things too. So what does it mean to not treat you just like a tool, not as just something that's valuable to me, not merely as a means? Here's two proposals I want to talk about on how, like, because what does it mean? I say don't treat people as merely as tools. And you're like, okay, but like, how do I, like, that's very vague, right? Like, can you give me some more advice as to what it means not to treat someone like a tool? Here's one account Kantians have offered, the end sharing account. An agent is using another as mere means, as a tool, as a mere object, as a mere inanimate object only valuable for my goals. If and only if it is reasonable for the agent to believe that the other agent cannot share the end he is pursuing in using him. So let me give you an example, right? I go to the barber. I'm going to get a haircut. I am using the barber, right? I'm using him to get a haircut, but I'm not merely using him. Like, I mean, I could merely use him like a tool. Here's how I could merely use him like a tool. I don't care what his choices are. I don't care what his goals are. I don't care if he's well-informed. I'm going to lie, cheat. I'm just going to say whatever sounds I need to make. So I get the haircut and I get out, right? And I'm going to keep my money too. So I lie to him, right? I lied. I'm like, I know if I tell him that I've got the money for the haircut, but I left it in my car. Can you give me the haircut and I'll go get my money from the car after the haircut. He'll give me the haircut. I can then leave the store and I can get in my car and leave and not have to pay, right? That's a case where I'm just treating him like a tool to get my haircut, right? My choices matter because I've set the goal of getting a haircut. Maybe because I want to look good, maybe because I'm trying to get a job, maybe because I just like to look at myself in the mirror, maybe because I'm trying to impress someone, maybe because my wife or my girlfriend is told, or my boyfriend has told me I need to get a certain, like whatever reason I need the haircut, I've chosen that that's a goal worth doing. That's why I'm here. So my choices matter, but his choices don't, because he wasn't going to choose to give me a free haircut. And I'm going to get around that. I'm going to get around that by telling him some sounds that make him think that I'm going to bring him money and then I'm not, right? So that would be just using him. And it's also an end he can't share in, right? Because I'm lying to him. Can we both have the goal, the end, the shared end of me lying to you to get a haircut? No, because you would know that you're being, here's an end we could both share. I'll give you $10. You give me a haircut. You agree to that? I agree to that. Cool. We both have a shared end. It's possible for us to have that shared end. So the formula of humanity, you can think of the goal, you're using somebody as a tool if you're treating them in a way that they couldn't possibly share the goal that you're treating them, that you have, right? So lying to someone's like that. Cheating is like that. Stealing from somebody. Can you steal from somebody that you share the goal of, like, so I want this object and you want me to have that object? Is that stealing? No, doesn't seem like it, right? Seems like stealing is like, you don't want me to have the object and I do want to have that object. So this account says, I am treating you in a way where my goals matter and yours don't. I'm dismissing you as a sort of thing that has goals that matter. If I'm treating you in ways, if I'm doing things, I'm interacting with you in ways that you couldn't possibly share the goal I have. So that involves lying, cheating, stealing, murdering, right? It does mean like murdering is like my goal is to kill you for money and your goal is not to be killed, right? If you come to me and you say, please kill me, I'm in a lot of pain and I want to alleviate your suffering, and so I kill you, that seems like that would be, we can both share that goal. That seems to be allowed here, right? Let me stop right here for a second. Questions? So this would be the sort of, this might be a way of understanding what Kantians mean when they say, don't like treat other people not like mere tools. Treat them like you as sources of value of objects in the world.
Um,
Yeah, Ali.
One thing that seems to be like I'm noticing here when they speak about people, it's like unlike the other ones which haven't touched on this, there's a very they try and also distinguish what makes something valuable, like what makes someone a person, and then you get into the inner workings of how that affects the way you interact with them. Like you interact with the earlier you gave the example of a stapler and how that's like useful because of like very early on you gave the example of stapler. It's useful because you plan on going to school, for example, and you treat it like a tool because it's not sentient. It's not something that has goals. But when it comes to something that's more living, you girls have to align if you want to be doing the right thing in this situation. And I guess it's less of a question, more of an observation, but just I find that like interesting. There's a more of a definition of what exactly the ethics apply to here.
So one nice thing that I want to stress, thank you, Ali, that for the utilitarians, happiness has value. Why? Well, you've experienced it, right? Compared to, I've saw red. Red's neutral. High-pitched noises, neutral. I've held a chair in my hands, neutral. A table, neutral, right? All these things I've interacted with, I've experienced, I've observed. If the universe was just them, the idea of value would never have entered my mind. So for utilitarians, one day you felt pleasure and you're like, oh, wow, okay, well, the universe contains goodness. That's good. There should be more of that. And you've experienced suffering. You're like, oh, no, that's bad. I don't want that. No one should have that, right? So they think that like goodness and badness is something you discover from experience. And it's in particular, it's an aspect of the experience of pleasure and it's the aspect of the experience of suffering, right? For the utilitarian. For Kantians, I mean, it's unpleasant, but like the claim is goodness and badness comes from being a free will, right? If I choose suffering, if I say I don't care if I suffer, I want to do this anyway. I'm gonna I'm gonna become an artist. I'm gonna paint, and I know it makes me miserable. I know this isn't the job that would make me the happiest. I know if I chose something else, I'd be happier doing it. Doesn't matter. This is what I want to do. This is what I choose to do. It's not even what I want to do. I want to go do that thing that would make me happier, but this is what I choose to do. I'm treating that as valuable, even if it makes me unhappy. And Kantians think that that's this ability, like that's you're free even from suffering and happy. You can even free yourself from doing what makes you happiest, because our ability to choose. So you can see this difference of where you think our view of good and badness goes, right? Like for utilitarians, it's just intrinsic properties of the experiences. And for Kantians, it's built into free will and our freedom of even from, I can even pursue the thing. I can freely choose to do the thing that brings me more suffering and costs me happiness because I decide I'm going to do this instead. I can, and that's the ability to treat things as important, to make them important for myself, regardless of, you know, regardless of what society tells me, regardless of whether it brings me happiness or not. So yeah, I mean, so the Kantians have a more complicated story. Ali, exactly. Anybody else? Ali too? Did that connect to what you were thinking?
That did align pretty well to what I was thinking. You put it more clearly than I did though.
For virtue ethicists, I mean, I don't like this account very much, but like it seems like being a good human being like we watched the video of from Millionaire Matchmaker, being like David, being like Bruce, like we saw somebody who's like super capable at human life. They're like good at their job and they're good at social interactions and they seem kind-hearted, like being good at human life, being a successful, like that's what being good is. Like being successful is the sort of thing you are. I don't like the idea that like you're supposed to be a certain thing. Let me give you another example. Imagine somebody decides to become a professional Halo player, right? Uh, they get an inheritance from their family, and they buy themselves an apartment, a condo, a mansion. They get Uber Eats every day. They're antisocial. They don't really like people. They're not really interested in sex, right? So they don't they don't really, maybe they get prostitutes come by every once in a while. I don't know. Right. But either way, they're not good at friendships. They're not good at work-life balance. They're not good at interacting with other people. They're not good at navigating social interactions. They're not good at making people feel comfortable. They're not good at like being courageous and danger. They're not good at any part of human life. Like everything, like even like their ability to live just depends on the fact that their parents left them money. But they are successful at the life they chose for themselves. They wanted to become the best Halo player, and they're doing that. They play all day. They they get good at it. They work hard, right? It is hard work, like I guess, and they succeed at that, right? So what is a virtue ethicist going to say about this person? Man, that is a failure as a human being. They're not good at interacting with people. They're not good at social circumstances. They're not good at like dealing with danger. There's only this like very specialized circumstance that they like you drop them in any other situation, they would fail, right? This is like it's like a zoo animal that's like good at the zoo, right? They're good at this very narrow, tiny like sliver of human life, but they're not good human beings. How about a utilitarian? Utilitarians say like, why aren't they donating their money to charity? They should like not be blowing all their money on like this like they could be making the world a better place instead of wasting it on just being living their life as this waste of a video game like trying to be the best Halo player. Like that's not a good goal to have. You should have the goal of trying to make the world a better place. What is a Kantian gonna say? Good for you, right? He's a free will. He chose, he didn't steal the money. He didn't lie to anyone, right? Another free will left him the money. They said, I want you to have this. They're like, thanks. And what am I going to do with it? I chose a life for myself. I chose the life of being the world's best Halo player, and then I achieved it, right? Like what they are is a free will. What standard can you judge a free will by? Did they set a goal for themselves? Did they succeed at it? And did they respect other free wills? That's it. Did that person do those three things? Yeah, that's it. So like if he had stolen the money to fund this life for himself, then that'd be a problem. If he was cheating to become the world's Halo, like he was cheating other free wills, then that'd be a problem. But the idea is like this person valued their own free will. They probably worked very hard. They set whatever, it doesn't matter what goal they've set, whatever goal they've set. That's what free will is. They set arbitrary goals. They value them just because they've chosen them. They work hard to pursue them. And the Kantian is going to claim they respect other free wills in their pursuit of that goal. That's the only moral objective standard by which to judge people. So I think Kant would have a problem with this person. Let me just asterisk this, because he would say the free will starts if you don't develop any other skills, then you start to get trapped into a one life. Like if you're 40 and you can only do one thing and you only are living off your parents, like what if the money gets disappeared? What if you start to not enjoy playing Halo anymore? And like maybe you're not good at any, like Kant seems to think that you need to develop a little bit of a range of skills just because that gives you freedom to pivot and to choose something different. And that, but I don't think that matters. That's not the point. The main, I think, to make the contrast clear is that Kantians don't judge your life on what sort of life they're not telling you what sort of life to live. They're saying you're a free will. Choose whatever life you want. You choose whatever life. Like it's not what you want. You can even choose a life you don't want. You could choose to do something that makes you miserable. It's like choose whatever life you choose. Like that's a free choice. But you need to pursue it in a way that respects other free wills equal value in pursuing their lives. One way to put this that's often is that Kantian ethics gives you side constraints. It doesn't give you a goal, right? Utilitarianism gives you a goal: make the world a better place. Quit playing Halo, go be a charity worker, or go work on Wall Street and make a bunch of money and donate it to charity, right? Like it tells you ethics is about telling you what goal to achieve. Kantian ethics says, I don't, no, whatever, like you're a free will, you choose a goal. But now that you've chosen a goal, you've committed yourself to the value of pursuing freely chosen goals. Do it in a way that that obeys the side constraint of not lying, cheating, and stealing, not disrespecting the value of other free wills. Okay, let me share my screen again real quick. So there's a complication here. I'm not going to read this, but basically, I said treat people in a way in which it's possible for you to share the end. But the problem is basically just sports. I mean, there's probably other ways that this problem arises, but just in general, if I'm in a competitive sport, I'm trying to win, they're trying to win, we can't share the same goal. If we're in a tournament, I mean, maybe we have the goal of let the best man win, but there might be someone who enters the competition just to win the prize money. And in that case, they're trying to win the prize money, and I'm trying to just let the best man win. We don't have the same goal. So it seems like in cases of competition, it's not possible to have the same goal. So some people think that's not the best way of expressing the formula of humanity. Here's an alternative account. Just saying an agent, they don't use people, and an agent is using somebody merely as a mere means, if and only if it's reasonable for the agent to believe that his treatment of the other agent is something to which the other one cannot possibly consent to. So it's possible that the other person could consent to let the best man win, right? Or that we're going to be in competition. So this is like another way of just defining the formula of humanity. I'll leave these two accounts for you as two different ways of defining what it means. So the formula of humanity just says, don't use people just like mere tools. Don't treat them like inanimate objects that are just to be used because they're valuable to you accomplishing your goals. What does it mean not to use people? Here's two possible accounts, right? One is if you're not using somebody, if you're using somebody, you're treating them in a way they couldn't possibly share the same goal as you, which seems to rule out lying, cheating, and stealing, right? And murder and rape. Another possible definition of this is to say you're treating somebody in a way that they couldn't possibly consent to. And lying, cheating, and stealing, and murder and rape also seem to violate that, right? If someone consents to rape, can someone consent to rape? No, right? It would just be consensual sex. Can someone consent to murder? No, that would be voluntary euthanasia. That'd be like helping someone die. Can someone consent to being robbed? No, that's just them giving you a thing. Can someone consent to being lied to? It's hard for me to even know what that means, because if they know they're being lied to, they're not going to believe it. So they're just consenting to being told something they know is false, which means the lie isn't going to work. And you know it's not going to work. So when you say the falsehood, it doesn't seem like it's a lie. Can someone consent to being cut in line in front of? No, that's just someone letting you in front of the line, right? So, I mean, both of these accounts are good. So if you think of like the one rule of morality being only interact with people in ways which it's possible that they could share the same goal as you, or only interact with people in ways that it's possible that they could consent towards. Both of these just rule out lying, cheating, stealing, killing, murdering, raping, all the sort of ways in which you would traditionally think interacting with people is wrong. It's a little harder to know what this rule says about suicide. Let me give you I mean, you might think that if someone asks you to help them kill themselves because they're in a lot of suffering, you would definitely be like, all right, well, that's their choice. I'm respecting choices. I should help them commit suicide. Or if you decide to commit suicide because you're in a lot of suffering, it's your choice. Kantian ethics is all about respecting choice. So you should be able to, so one way of thinking about Kantian ethics, it just is clearly fine with suicide. But here's a way in which you might make the case it's not okay with suicide. The value of all things comes from our choices, right? Our free will. And I'm valuing my free will. I'm valuing it. So that this stapler is valuable only because it's valuable to the choices I've made. This cell phone is only valuable because it's useful to either I've chosen to keep it or I've chosen to do things that it enables me to do. It has Duolingo, so I've chosen to learn Turkish. Duolingo on the phone helps me learn Turkish, so now the phone's valuable, right? So its valuable comes from my free will, right? Same thing with this stapler. Its value comes from my free will. You take all the free wills out of the universe, you've emptied the sources of all value in the universe. So here's the worry is that whatever goal you're accomplishing by committing suicide, its value comes from your value, and yet you're destroying yourself to accomplish it. And you might think that there's something contradictory there, right? Imagine there's like a teenager, and he really wanted to go to summer camp, and his parents decided not to send him to summer camp. So to prove a point, to show his to cause his parents to get back at them, to prove how much it mattered to him, like whatever, he kills himself, right? So he accomplishes this goal. He hurts his parents. He gets back at them. He proves a point. And what he sacrifices to do that is his free will. But those goals are only valuable because his free will is valuable, because he's chosen. So he's like sacrificing the source of the value to accomplish this lesser thing. Like it's like I really value this stapler. And the stapler is valuable because I chose it and because my free will is valuable. And I'm going to kill myself to keep this stapler in existence. It's like, well, wait, no, but you're the source of the value of the stapler. Like the stapler can't be more important than you, because like its value depends upon you. You're the fountain from which value flows. So like getting back at your parents is only value. Anyway, we're going to talk about this more later in the semester. But there is like a Kantian argument here from the Formula of Humanity about the immorality of the illogicality, the irrationality, the immorality of suicide. So some Kantians think that yes, the Formula of Humanity rules out suicide, but I think most Kantians think no, it doesn't. And then here's the way you might think that it rules out suicide. Here's the idea. Our capacity for free choice makes other things valuable. We are the source of value in the world. Everything else is merely valuable as tools, as means to our accomplishing our chosen goals. We are ends. Everything else is just means, just tools. But what happens when you choose killing yourself as your goal? Accomplishing my goal is only valuable if me, the source of value, is valuable. But if my goal is suicide, then I'm treating myself as worthless. So does suicide violate the requirement that we treat ourselves as an end, as the source of value of everything else? Okay. Let me get down to this. So at this step, I want to point out that, again, we've only been talking about the formula of humanity. And I've told you again, the Kantians have one rule, just one rule, the categorical imperative, the rule that applies to everybody no matter what. That's the moral rule. But there's a lot of ways in which you might state it. 3 in particular is the sort of main, and one is the formula of humanity. We've been talking about that. The other way that I want to talk about is the formula of universal law. That's the other kind of main moral. And I mean, I myself is someone who thinks Kantian ethics is correct. And I go back and forth about what to think here. Sometimes I think that these two rules are the same thing. Sometimes I think the formula of humanity is correct and we need to throw away the formula of universal law. Sometimes I think the formula of universal law is the correct way and we should throw away the formula of humanity. So like Kantians are just sort of split. Like it's definitely just one rule, but like, is it 2 ways of saying the same rule, or is just one of these the correct way of saying it? So it's going to sound very different. Let me just read it to you. Act only in accordance with the maxim through which you can at the same time will it become a universal law. Okay, that's just another like 18th century difficult to understand way of phrasing it. So I'm going to simplify it for you. This is not a way Kant put it ever. Let me see. Let me find a nice way of putting it. Okay. This way here. Only perform an action for a goal if that type of action could work as the universal way of accomplishing that type of goal in relevantly similar circumstances, by which we rule out parasitic. Okay, great. So what does that mean? So we just say only perform an action for a goal in some circumstances if that type of action could accomplish that type of goal in relevantly similar. So let me give you an example. Cutting in line. So when I cut in line, I'm at the ATM and I'm waiting to get money. I'm in line. I'm in the back. I'm like 10 people back, and I'm annoyed because I want some money. I can't believe that there's a line. It's cold out too. So I want something quicker. That's my goal. I'm going to get it quicker. And what am I going to do? That's the goal. What's the action? I'm going to cut in line. So the action I'm going to perform is cut in line to get something I want quicker. So then question is, if it's moral, it should be able to be the universal type of way to accomplish that type of goal. So could everybody cut in line to get something they want quicker? Would I accomplish my goal if everybody was operating according to the same policy? Yes or no? What do you think? If everybody was willing, yeah. Ashley says no. Everyone's cutting in line to get something they want just because it will get them the quick. Why does it not work anymore?
Because now you guys have conflicting like you guys may have the same goal, but you have conflicting goals because
there's not going to be a line anymore, right? It's just going to be a mob.
Yeah.
We're all cutting in line, and then there's no line like you can't even cut in line if everyone has the same policy. So
Yep.
Good. So the claim here is the argument for this policy is if you're acting from reason, you have the same reasons as everybody else. So if you're doing something according to a policy that only works because you're the only one doing it, then you're not acting from reason. So think of it this, and you're being parasitic, right? You're saying, I'm going to have a double standard for myself. Everybody else everyone else have the policy of standing in line even if you want something quicker, but I'll have the policy of not standing in line when I want something quicker. So like I can't be operating according to a policy that could hold for all free wills, for all rational agents. Like so the claim is I can't possibly be acting according to reason because reasons should be the same for everybody. And this is something that only works if I'm the only one doing it, if it's a double standard. And my reasons shouldn't be special. I'm being parasitic, right? I'm a parasite. Everybody else is not taking the fact that they want something quicker as good reason to cut in line. And that's the only reason I'm able to do that, which means I'm the one who's the eccentric. I'm the one who's being the weirdo. I'm the one who's operating according to my own double standard. And the claim is something like if you're being rational, you're operating according to reasons that all rational agents would be able to obey. And this is something that if all rational agents obeyed, it couldn't be right. So you can't be operating according to reason, so you're being irrational. That's another way. I mean, you kind of get the same result for this set of rules, right? Is if you check to make sure that that you only act in ways that could be universalized, the policy, the action that you're performing for the goal could be the universal way of accomplishing that type of goal, then you get something that rules out lying, cheating, stealing, murdering, raping, like the same sorts of things for similar reasons, right? You're treating your free will as special, as if you have special rules, as if you have a double standard that makes you have a unique set of reasons that everyone else doesn't have. So that's the sense in which the formula of universal law is supposed to be the same as the formula of humanity. The formula of humanity says don't use people merely as tools. The formula of universal law says, like act according to rules that only everybody could follow and still work. And those are the sort of two ways in which Kantians are getting at this idea that ethics is about interacting with other free wills as in a respectful way, in a way that values other free wills as equals to yourself. So we talked about cutting in line. Let's talk about lying. Suppose I want something from you. And I'm like, all right, well, my policy, my personal life policy is when I want something, I will tell people falsehoods to get it. I'll lie to them to get it. Would that work if everybody who wanted something lied at the drop of a hat to get it? Why wouldn't it, Ashley, or anybody?
Because then they would be going against other people. Because if you lie to the drop of the hat to get what you want, you're now making it harder for other people. Like you're conflicting with their goal of not being lied to, of having an honest companion, for example.
You get in there, but like, why would my lie not work if like, why is my lie only work because other people are operating according to a different policy? Like if everybody just took it as a fact that if you want something, you should say something false, why would my lie no longer work?
Wouldn't they know you're lying then?
Yeah, no one would trust anyone, right? The only reason lies work is because other people take wanting something as not a good enough reason to say a falsehood, right? They say, I want something, but that's not a good enough reason to tell a lie, so I'll keep telling the truth, right? So normally people don't, and then you're treating yourself as special. Like you're parasitic. You're saying, I have special reasons. I want something, and that's good reason for me to tell a lie, but I need everyone else to operating according to different rules so I can break them and take advantage of the breaking, right? So it's parasitic, right? It only works. It's a policy for how I live my life that only works if everybody else is living a different way. Because if everybody lived the way I live, no one would trust anyone. And there wouldn't be any lies, just wouldn't work. Lies wouldn't exist because everybody would just, there would be no one trusts anyone anyway. And a lie is taking advantage of trust, right? They're assuming that you're telling them the truth, whether you want to tell them the truth or not. So lies wouldn't work as a universal policy. Cutting in line wouldn't work as a universal policy. Stealing, I want something, so I take it. That would also make stealing impossible if everyone operated the same way, because it makes property no longer exist, right? This bike is not mine. It is it's closest to me than anyone else, but it's not mine because I don't use it and I respect it. I'm not going to break it. If it was mine, I would break it to make a point in this class. But property is not just having things close to you, right? It's the fact that other people respect it as being yours and give you the right to decide what happens to it and who gets to use it, right? So stealing involves me saying, I want something, so I'm going to take it. If everyone operated that way, they just took things when they wanted them, property wouldn't exist. So would stealing not exist. It would just be people fighting and holding things and whatever you had closest to you and you could beat people up. Like there wouldn't be such thing as, you couldn't own anything because there's no such thing as ownership in this world. It's just whatever you can keep closest to you. Okay, so there's a harder case here to make sense of on the formula of universal law. Murder. So if I want to kill somebody, let's say that I want someone's job. I want my boss's job, or I want a job that there's somebody ahead of me they're likely to get, and I'm going to kill them for it. Why would that not work as a universal policy? So my action for my goal, my action is I want something. I guess I want this job, and that's the goal. And my action is to kill this person to get it. Why would it? What would undermine me if everybody else acted in the same way?
wouldn't they just try to kill you?
Yeah, presumably somebody else would kill me for the job, or they'd kill me for my car, or they'd kill me for my apartment, right? In a world where people kill each other, like wanting something is a good enough reason to kill another person for it, is a world where I would not be able to accomplish my goals, right? I would not be able to success. Like the only reason killing somebody to get something you want works is because you live in a world where people aren't doing that, right? If everyone just took as a good, I mean, a good reason, I don't know, to take a drink of water is because you're thirsty. People can do that. Everyone can go do that, right? Everyone's thirsty, so you go take a drink of water. But in a world where everyone thinks wanting something is a good reason to cut in line is a world where there are no lines. In a world where everyone thinks that wanting something is a good reason to lie is a world where lies won't work. A world where wanting something is a good reason to take it is a world where stealing and property doesn't exist. A world where killing someone because you want something is a good reason to kill them is a world where me killing someone to get something for myself is just going to undermine my getting it in the end, right? So the formula of universal law is ruling out any action that is parasitic in this way, that requires a double standard, where it says, like, if the only reason this way of acting is working for you is because other free wills are not acting that way, then you're doing something wrong. And that's going to rule out the same sorts of things as the formula of humanity. Don't lie, cheat, steal, murder, rape, etc. Okay, let's end on that and just say, so for Kantian ethics, right, the overall thrust is that ethics is not about being a good human being, being mature and skilled at human life, like the virtue ethicist thinks. It's also not about making the world a better place. It's not trying to maximize happiness and minimize suffering, right? The badness of a lie is not because it's causing people suffering, but bringing you happiness. It's not about, because sometimes lies would be fine on that account. Maybe lies will make people happier. The badness of lies is that I'm not respecting you as a free will. I'm not interacting with another free will in a way that treating them as valuable in the same way that I treat my own free will as valuable. And I do treat my free will as valuable. Otherwise, I would be depressed, right? Kantians can say, you think free will is important. You think that doing things and authoring your own life and pursuing a choice because you've chosen it is important. And you know how I know it's important? Because you're not laying in bed depressed. You're doing stuff. If you're doing stuff, then you're committed to this value. If you're committed to this value, then you're contradicting your own values when you don't respect it in other people. That's the Kantian argument. And that's what they think ethics is. And that's actually the ethical theory that I think is correct. Although I have plenty of smart colleagues who disagree with me. 2/3 of philosophers disagree with me because 1/3 are virtue ethicists, 1/3 are utilitarians. So, but none of us have quite made none of us have gotten I don't know, the majority quite yet here. Questions, concerns? Let me end with one more example. Suppose that someone says, I'm going to cut in line. But I'm going to cut in line. Listen, I'm cutting in line. I'm at the airport. I get off the plane, right? And you know when you're at the airport and you go to wait for the cab, and there's like a line for cabs, and the first person in line gets in, the second person gets in the second cab, the third person gets in the third cab, right? And I'm thinking about cutting in line there. And the reason I'm going to cut in line is that I'm bleeding to death. And everybody else is just trying to get home from the airport, right? They're just trying to get a cab. But I'm bleeding to death and I need a cab to the airport. And for some reason, I can't ask them permission. Like presumably they grant me permission. So I'm going to cut. I'm going to cut because I can't ask. Even if I could ask, I probably would still cut. It's not just because I want something quicker. It's because my life is in grave danger, and everything that matters to me is about to be, because I'm going to die. Whereas the people I'm cutting in front of, it's at the cost of only some trivial thing. Like they're just going to have to like wait 10 more seconds for the next cab because I took the first cab. So at a trivial cost to some group of people, I'm going to cut in line to save everything in my life. Um, what would a Kantian say there, applying the formula of humanity, a formula of universal law? I
Wouldn't they
Yeah,
claim that?
go for it.
Oh, did I cut you off?
No, go.
Um, wouldn't they claim that the because of the value of what's it how much would be lost, like the individual person, how much of like they would lose dying in that moment, that wouldn't it be more important for like it would be okay for them to cut for that reason?
I'm not sure what to say with the formula of humanity, but the formula of universal law, I think, I, so there's a lot of philosophy professors teaching this class would say the Kantian just says never cut in line, you never, but I think you can in this case. Because just apply the formula of universal law. If everybody in that line had the policy of cutting in line to save their life when other people weren't, their lives didn't depend on it, would it still work to cut in line? Yeah, it would, because they would still stand in line because their life is not at risk and only yours is. And so the policy works for you, and they could all have the same policy. The line still exists and it works, right? It wouldn't work at the hospital. If I had that policy at the hospital, I wouldn't be. So the fact that my life depends upon it, but everybody's life depends upon it, and I'm the fifth in line, I couldn't cut there. But if I'm using that policy at the airport where everybody else doesn't, they're just losing 10 seconds, 10 minutes, whatever, and I'm saving my life, it seems like the policy would work. So I think that cutting in line will sometimes work and sometimes not. It depends. Notice when you test the formula of universal law, it's not just your action, it's the action for the goal. So cutting a line just because you want something quicker, that would destroy all lines. So never. Cutting in line in the circumstances where you're doing it because your life depends upon it, but no one else's life depends upon it, that would work, even if everybody had that same policy. Somebody in my last class pointed out a nice objection, which I had to think about. What about like the pregnant woman who's like, I'm cutting in line because I'm pregnant and everybody else isn't, or like someone who cuts in line because like I'm late for work and no one else is late for work. I think that's a really nice objection, and that's the sort of objection that people raise to the formula of universal law. And that might be the sort of objection that leads you to say, like, I think this is the wrong statement of the Kantian principle. We should use the formula of humanity instead. People have done that for this very reason, that they think that like they can come up with examples the formula of universal law rules out or allows that it shouldn't. But I think I find both of them very compelling and not sure which one to adopt. Because let's take the pregnant mother and the person who's late for work. I think if they thought that that was in those cases, I suspect what's going on is their true motivation is, the pregnant mother, had she been late for work and not pregnant, she would have used the late for work. The late for work guy, had he been a pregnant mother, he would have used that instead. If they didn't have either of those, they would have chosen the fact that they were sleepy, or the fact, the point being is the reason they're cutting in line is just because they want to, and they're coming up with any dumb excuse. Like everyone's got their shit. Like everyone's got something going on in their life that gives them reason, like some trivial thing. I'm pregnant, I'm late for work, I have an important project due today, I'm not in a good mood, right? And if everyone used whatever trivial reason they have to cut, then there would be no lines. So like part of lines existing, I think, is not just saying, I want something quicker, and so I'm not going to cut, right? Like standing in line, even though I want it quicker. But also, like, I'm also not going to let trivial excuses give me good reason to cut. Maybe major things like my life, depending upon it. So I think that we can make like the policy should allow for that. But my suspicion is that everybody always has some trivial reason or some like inconvenience that gives them a special reason, but it's not special when you realize that everyone's got something. So yeah, I mean, maybe, I mean, it's kind of a good question whether this principle would work. So again, we've got two different, well, three really. We've got a couple different ways of stating the Kantian's categorical imperative. And there's a good question of whether we should use the formula of humanity or the formula of universal law. I tend to think that they're both pretty good candidates. I think the formula of universal law deals with this like pregnant mother, person who's busy cutting in line for work objection pretty well. People object. Another case that people worry about is vengeance murders. So I talked about murdering someone to get their job. And of course, if I murdered someone to get their job, then somebody would murder me for the job. Or if I murdered someone to get their apartment, then I'd be living in a world where people were killing each other for their apartments and their cars and their jobs, right? And I would probably not be able to hold on to any of the things I murdered somebody for. But what if I'm just murdering somebody from pure vengeance? I'm just like, I'm killing you not to hold a job, not to get my property. I just want you dead. Maybe a world where people kill for like maybe that would pass this test. I mean, yeah. Anyway, I think currently the formula of humanity version of the categorical imperative tends to be the more popular one, but I'm still a little torn about which one I think is correct. But just to end, again, we've talked about three moral theories, and today we talked about Kantian ethics, and they each give us, I'm scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up, a different supreme principle of morality. The virtue ethicist gives us none, because ethics is about being a mature, good person, which doesn't involve memorizing and applying a rule, but having a skill, that skill dealing with all sorts of values. Utilitarians, there is a rule. It's happiness, you maximize happiness. Kantians, there is a rule, and it's the rule that defines what it means to have a respectful, mutual, valuing relationship with a fellow free will. And those are our three ethical theories. Otherwise, if anyone has any questions, you can say, you can stick around. Otherwise, I'll see you on Wednesday. That's it. That's the class.
This isn't much of a question.
Go for it.
I was just curious. Remember the conversation we had end of last class?
You have to remind me.
About the comic book, the Superman comic book.
Oh, yeah.
You read it or no? Because I'm
I
currently
have not
looking.
read it.
I was trying to
It's the what to get for the man who has everything.
like yeah
Right?
for the man who has
Alan
everything. Yeah,
Moore.
because
I don't even know
was
how
still
I would
looking
go
for.
about getting it.
I mean, it might be on Amazon. I was gonna say I'm also like I am trying to get my hands on the experience machine as well from our same conversation. I was trying to get my because I really do like reading books in a physical form. So right now I'm trying to get my hands on the physical book of that.
Let me
So yeah, I was just curious.
let me look up. Maybe I can listen. So sometimes YouTube has someone read the comic book.
Hey, that might be there.
Superman, man who has everything. Oh, I can at least watch an episode of a cartoon about it.
Oh, there was a cartoon that adapted it because it was considered really good. I think the book was better, but
Yeah, I'll see if I can find somebody who reads.
honestly, no, actually, if you just want to watch that cartoon episode, it's also just really good. It's really good as well, in my opinion.
Okay.
I'm
All right,
looking
I'll give that a
for
shot.
it right now. I was just curious because I'm looking for Experience Machine right now, at least a physical version. If I
The
can't
book,
find that,
it's
I'll
going to
just
be
give
called,
up.
I think it's in let me nose it's probably Nozick. It's probably under his book called Philosophical. Where is it? Is it? Oh, it's an Anarchy, State, and Utopia.
Anarchy, State, and Utopia.
Yeah, which is a good book. We're going to talk about it later. It's a book about libertarian political philosophy.
Okay. I found it. I found it. I found it. Thank you for helping me with that. That's about all I got. Have a good one.
All right, you take care.